All right, for this next slide, we're looking at a couple different ways you can do reasoning, inductive versus deductive reasoning. For inductive, you can see that we're going from something specific to a general thinking. Example of that one I'll use is robins. So very specific. Robins have feathers. All birds have feathers. Therefore, a robin must be a bird. General. And then you can flip that around the other way and say that robins or all birds have feathers. Robin is a bird, therefore robins must have feathers. I think I did that right. But again, the idea is coming from specific to general and general to specific. Right, moving on to the next slide. And let me make this thing here a little pointer. Okay, limitations in environmental science. A couple things we can look at here is the idea that we don't always have all the data. So when you look at something like climate change, we're working with all the information that we have. And science keeps getting better and better in our understandings as far as, for example, how vast or what temperature the world will be. But we're always gathering more information and looking at results. None of those things are necessarily what you might call proof, but they're data points that you add into the entire conversation of climate change. Looking at the next point here, most systems are dynamic and many variables are affecting the outcome. And this is what we were talking about earlier, is that it's very difficult to pinpoint one particular thing and say this is what's causing the outcome. Okay, let's move forward. Models. Models are something that scientists use both on small scale and large scale, and then just something that we can't necessarily cause to happen right now. We create computer models to try to make predictions or better understandings of some phenomenon. A really good example of this one, which we see quite often, is like hurricanes. You have some hurricane in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean going towards the United States. They create these things which they call them like spaghetti models, where it shows all these various lines scooting up across the United States. Sometimes they say it's going to hit New Orleans. Maybe it's going to swing over Florida. And you get like 50 different models of what might happen. And as the time goes on and looking at various conditions in the mix, we get a better understanding of what we might think will happen. But with more and more as time passes, we get better and better at making these predictions. All right, feedback loops. A couple different types of feedback loops, and try to get an understanding of this now because it comes up all the time. A positive feedback loop, sometimes we put a happy spin on these, a negative. We look at it as like, well, those are not good. Really, it tends to be the other way around. The way to think of a positive feedback loop is something that keeps going in the same direction over and over. A snowball effect, snowball going down the hill. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Erosion is the example we're using here. The more erosion you have on the side of a hill, the more water is going to be able to rush down the side of the hill. Well, the more water rushes down the side of the hill, it's going to take stuff with it. More erosion, more water, and this keeps going and going and going. Recycling, that one's okay. I'm going to use a different example of that one. I'll use the idea of sweating. It's hot outside, or your house. Well, I'll use that as a better example. Your house in the wintertime. It's cold. So the thermostat kicks on. The heat comes on. Eventually your house warms up. The heat turns off. Your house is warm. And then eventually it gets cold again. The heat comes on and fixes it. So a negative feedback loop is correcting and bringing back what we're going to call here in a second a homeostasis, a steady state, something that stays the same. Your body does this continuously, trying to maintain a temperature of 98.6 or so. Other things that could be going on are time delay effects and synergistic effects. So a good example for this one is, for example, smoking. Time delays means you don't see the effect right away. So people, young, whatever age, they start smoking and they think there's nothing's going to happen to me. There's no problem here. It's not until much later they realize that, oh, there's some health effects to this, whatever, cancer, emphysema. And at that point, well, it's too late. Luckily, we know the effects before we actually get that far. Now, making matters worse, a synergistic effect is you have mesothelioma. So when you're doing this cigarette smoking, it makes it all the much worse. Okay. Steady state. This is the idea of, again, as I mentioned earlier, 98.6, our body temperature. We are trying to maintain that homeostasis temperature because our body systems, they regulate best at that time, or temperature, excuse me. So if we get out of that temperature mix, that 98.6 temperature, your body will do one of two things. It's going to sweat in an attempt to cool it down, or it's going to shiver to actually try to raise the temperature up. Interesting. All right, a little bit of chemistry for you. I can't get away from that. I do enjoy the chemistry. Orgo, organic chemistry. These are compounds that contain carbon. And typically there's a whole bunch of things that are attached to it, but it's a carbon chain. So carbon attached to carbon attached to carbon. And then you have these little branches, which have other atoms that are attached to it, like hydrogen or nitrogen, chlorine, sulfur, phosphorus, a couple other things. And these are some names on there of some types of carbon compounds, so hydrocarbons, chlorinated, and such. It says all other compounds, if you're not considered organic, you are considered inorganic. So these are two classes that you can take in college once you get there. States of matter. Solids, liquids, and gases, you guys are pretty familiar with this. There is a fourth state that we'll probably mention right here and never again. It's actually the most common state in the universe. Plasmas, by far the most common state of matter in the universe. Ionized gases, and they need really, really high temperature. And the place you're going to find those are on stars. So the vast majority of the universe is made up of stars. But here on planet Earth, not so much. We can ionize gases, of course, but we just don't typically see it that often. So we really won't refer to it at all. Solid, liquids, and gases. Now, one little fun fact tidbit I will point out to you right now is, in what state does water have the highest density? The knee-jerk reaction is to say that it is solid, because that works for almost everything. But it's not true for water. Water has the highest density in the liquid state, specifically at 4 degrees Celsius. That is the highest density for water. And a really quick check you can ask yourself is, does ice float or sink? Because if it's dense, ice should sink. And it doesn't. It floats on the liquid. So the liquid must be more dense than the solid. All right, quality of matter. This really goes along with energy as well. Pretty much the more undisturbed or the more packed together something is, the higher quality. And that's really what you're going after. Not like good or bad. It's just like undisturbed or unused. So the more unused something is, the higher the quality. After it is processed through, you tend to either have combinations with it or it degrades a little bit and it becomes a lower quality substance. Pollution. There's a couple different categories of pollution that we will mention here. You have things that are degradable, and in this particular category, we're looking at something that's either by weather or sunlight, so UV rays can break things down naturally. Some things are designed that UV rays, a high energy ray, can break things down to smaller particles. Biodegradable means it's going through that process through the aid of some living thing, bacteria, fungi, something along those lines, is breaking it down into smaller particles. Something that's slowly degradable, it'll break down, but it's going to take some time, clearly. So it may take a couple days, weeks, months, or years. Non-degradable, like plastics, most plastics, there's nothing in nature that works on it. So we're stuck with it forever. This is one of the conversations of the good versus bad of things like plastic. It also goes to some pesticides. This is a funny little picture. I believe this guy is getting, or whoever this is getting sprayed with something for lice. It might be DDT they're actually using for it. I don't know, this is bizarre. But this is something that was once used once upon a time, but they have been outlawed since. They might be using what's called, again, DDT. And it's a chemical that kills a lot of insects, but it also does some harm to people in the long run. So we used to use this a whole bunch once upon a time, but we no longer use it because it is dangerous. Okay, this is a good spot to take a break, and we'll pick it up with the next lecture after this.